What is up, Hill Church? I am so pumped to be with you guys this morning. As Pastor Bo said, my name is Drew, and I hail from the greatest state in the world, Texas, but here in Missouri, joining you guys virtually. So super pumped. Like he said, I'm the youth pastor back home and the youth director of 4 of our campuses, and we're just loving being here with you guys this morning. I believe I have a word for you guys this morning. We're calling it Easter in August. All right, I know Easter's not in August, but just bear with me. If you're taking notes, it's Jesus is King. And we can stop right there. You can just write it down. We can be done. No, we're not going to be done. Jesus is King. We're going to look at Jesus, the King, through the aspects of the Easter story. All right, completely Easter. So we're going to start with Jesus, and we see him before he's going to the cross. We see Jesus with his 12. Right? And they're at the Last Supper, and everybody knows this story. They're eating, they're hanging out, right? And Jesus hits them with some bombs. He tells them straight up, hey, look, this is the deal. I am going to die. I will not be here anymore. All right? And he hits them with this, lets him know where he's going, what's going to happen, and it throws him off. Right here begins my first point. If you're taking notes, the passion of the King. And the first picture we see is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I'm going to read that scripture. It's in Matthew 26, starting in 36, and I'm reading from the Message Bible, so you may not know exactly all these words, but this is what it says. Then Jesus went with them to a garden called Gethsemane and told his disciples, stay here while I go over there and pray. Taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he plunged into an agonizing sorrow. Then he said, well, let's start. I love where it says agonizing sorrow because it shows the true passion behind Jesus, an agonizing sorrow. Then he said, this sorrow is crushing my life out. Stay here and keep vigil with me. Going a little ahead, he fell on his face praying. Talking to God, he says this, my Father, if there is any way, get me out of this. But please, not what I want, what do you want? And so we see Jesus here, and he's literally, at this moment, he's on his knees. He's sweating drops of blood. He's begging his Father. He's saying, if you could take, another verse says, if you could take this cup from me. All right, not your will, or not my will, but your will. And he's pleading and begging because what he knew was yes, the beating that he was about to endure, it was going to be something like no other. He knew what was about to happen. Yes, he knew that the nails that were going to be driven through his hands and through his feet, it was going to be agonizing. It was going to be painful. You see, crucifixion was one, and still to this day would be considered one of the worst ways that you could die. You're literally left there just fighting for breath, gasping for air. But Jesus knew that there was something worse than that beating or that the nails going through his hands. Every sin that every sin that you would ever commit, every sin that you have, or every sin that I will ever or have committed, he would have that on him. And so he knew that, but still, he chose to take his passion and go to the cross with it. So what passion drove this king to do such what I like to call a savage move? Some people don't like to look at Jesus as a savage. Jesus was savage. This was, I don't know anybody else that would ever do something like this. And so Jesus does that. What is the passion that drove this king to do that? You see, when he was nailed to the cross, what did he do? He took on oppression. And I don't know where you're at this morning, but you may be oppressed. You may feel oppressed. You may feel some of these things abused. There may be sickness in your life. He took oppression on. He took abuse. He took sickness. He went to that cross and took those marriage issues that you think you cannot get through. He took that broken home. He even took COVID-19. What we're all going through right now in this country, he took in that moment. When he was pierced, it was him saying this, I love you. I did all of this for you. I did all of this to take all of these things away. When he was beaten, that was Jesus saying, hey, I love you. When he took on the cross, he was taking our worst. He was taking your worst, my worst, to the grave. And so when we ask ourselves, what passion drove this king to do such a crazy act? That passion was you. That passion was me. That passion is us. You see, his passion was so strong in the garden that he's pleading with his father. He's pleading, saying again, God, not my will, but yours. But if you could just take this cup from me. But God, I know, not my will, but yours. And then we fast forward. And I would have loved to have been a part of getting to just kind of see the faces. So he's in the garden. He starts to get up, right? He gets up and he looks off, right? And he sees this group of men start walking towards him. And who is in there? None other than one of his 12, which he already told Judas what he told him. Hey, you are going to go ahead, go do what you are supposed to do. Go do what you are planning to do. And that's betraying. I would have loved to see the faces on Judas coming in and the Roman soldiers, and then see the faces of the disciples, because this is their guy. Like, this is their buddy. You've been rolling with Jesus this long, and you're going to do this? I would have loved just to see the faces. And so right here, what do we see? We see the perfect picture of what true betrayal really looks like. So then he goes on, he goes up to Jesus and he kisses Jesus on the cheek, signifying what? Signifying, hey, this guy, this is the man that is calling himself a king. This is the man that is saying he is the king of the Jews. And then he's taken away to be judged. Why is he being judged? He's being judged for something for something he hasn't done. He's being judged for being who he is, he's saying who he truly is, and yet he's going to be judged, and he's being taken off and being charged. And I'm going to read this, and I love the way it says it here in Mark 15, and starting at verse 16. It says this: as he's taken away, the soldiers took Jesus into the palace. And they called together the entire brigade. And I love that, because I feel like somewhere deep down, they were a little fearful of this guy. They were a little scared of Jesus. It wasn't just one guy. They had to call the entire brigade. Then it says they dressed him up in purple. Well, we're going to stop there. Why purple? Purple signifying royalty. They put a crown plaited from a thorn bush on his head. Then they began their mockery. They banged on his head with a club, spit on him, and knelt down in mock worship. After they had their fun, they took off the purple cape, put his own clothes back on him. Then they marched out to nail him on the cross. And so what's so crazy to me is they're mocking Jesus, right? They're mocking Jesus for what they were about to really quickly find out who he was. They're mocking this king, and what they didn't know is not only was he, yes, he is a king, but he is the King of Kings, right? And so they're mocking this king. The king that they were mocking, and this is funny to me, the king that they're mocking is the same exact king that created them. And I start thinking about this, and as I'm reading it, I start kind of playing it out in my mind. All right, I see these soldiers, they're mocking him, and then at night they're going home, right? They're gambling or hanging out with their family, hanging out with their buddies, whatever they're doing. The same king that they're choosing to mock is the same king that created the stars that they got to look up at every single night. The same king that they're mocking is the king that created the very air they were breathing while they were beating him. And they had no clue. They had no clue of the true power that was behind this king, the true power that this king had. And so that brings me to our next point, is we're talking about the passion. Who is the passion? What drove this man to do this thing? You, me, we are the passion. But the next thing is the power of the king. You see, the incredible thing about Jesus is that there's so much power in his words. Power that when he speaks, demons flee. Throughout the entire Bible, we see in his entire earthly ministry, what do we see? We see him healing a leper. All right, what else do we see? We see him say, hey, Lazarus, hey, come on out. Come on, you ain't dead anymore, come on out. Right? He goes in and he heals a woman with an issue of blood who's had this issue forever. She was shunned, frowned upon. He comes in and heals her with his words, with his touch, with who he is. This is the power of the King. The same words that come out of his mouth, what? Oceans are formed. What we say, dead become alive. And here they are sitting, mocking this king. And what's so crazy thinking about it to me is that at any moment, at any moment, I almost look at it like the Avengers, and there's Thanos, right? And at any moment, all he had to do is snap his finger. With one word, with one snap, everything could have been changed. He did not have to do what he did. He could have changed everything right then and there. Yet he chose to pursue and keep on going. That is the power that's in this king. You see, Jesus isn't and hasn't been, will never be what the soldiers were fooled by. The soldiers, see, I think that as they're beating him, they're talking a little trash. They're talking some mess, right? And they're thinking, oh, this guy's weak. He ain't nothing but a wimp. This guy's a punk. He's not who he says he is, right? In this moment, they thought that taking him, and by him taking this beating and taking it on, oh, he's weak. He's completely weak. But in essence, he was the perfect personification of power. But yet they had no idea yet. They had no idea. And what's so incredible to me is that he did not retaliate. Not one time in the Word do we see where Jesus retaliated. Oh, they were beating him. Oh, and then we see, oh, well, Jesus got up and smacked him. No, he didn't retaliate. He just took it. He took everything. Jesus allowed these men to do what they did. And I love it because think of that word allowed. He allowed them to do this. Again, at any moment he could have stopped it. But he allowed them to beat him. He allowed them to whip him. Then what do we see? He gets drugged to the cross. All these splinters, I can just imagine the splinters just digging into his skin. These open wounds, right? Then 8-inch nails are driven and pierced into his hands, pierced into his feet. And I sit there, why would he do this? You see, at this moment, this is what he does. He lays down the power of the king for the passion of the king. And we talk about what's the passion? The passion is you, the passion is me. So he lays down this power for a brief moment in his life for you and for me. And why? Because there's a promise on the other end. There's a promise on the other side of all this. There's the passion of the king, then there's the promise of the king. The power of the king. He lays down the power for now what? The promise. And the promise of the king is this. Jesus had been crucified, yes. He had been buried in a borrowed tomb. It's not just some ordinary tomb, because you go to some other dead person's tomb right now, that body is decayed and it's still in there. That tomb was borrowed. It was on loan for just a few days. And during this time, as I'm reading, I'm thinking, I'm like, well, where are the 12 the whole time? This is his group. This is his entourage. Where are they? Hey, this is the group of 12 that are saying, hey, Jesus, I got your back no matter what. Jesus, I'm going to follow you to the end. Jesus, if someone tries to hurt you, I'm going to hurt them first. So I'm looking and I'm reading, I'm thinking, man, where are the 12? Where are they during this moment? They're scattered and they're scared. Because why? Because just like in our country right now, everything going on, we're a little scared, a little scatterbrained. Why? Because we have lost sight of the promise. The 12 had lost sight of the promise. Jesus had promised him over and over again. He said, look, I'm going to die. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. All right. Yes, I'm going to be handed over to sinners. I'm going to be betrayed. Laid out the whole story for him. It should have come by no surprise that this was happening. But guess what? Here's the promise. I'm going to rise again, and I'm going to rise again for your victory. And that is the same promise that we have today. And so in Luke 24:5, these two women, they're going to the tomb, right? And this is what it says in Luke. It says, then out of nowhere, it seemed, two men, light cascading over them, stood there. The women were awestruck and bowed down in worship. The men said this, why are you looking for the living one in a cemetery? He is not here, but raised up. And then it says this, remember. So here they are trying to get them, hey, remember that promise. Remember what he said he was going to do. Remember how he told you when you were still back in Galilee that he had to be handed over to sinners, be killed on the cross, and then 3 days rise up. There's that promise. In 3 days, hey, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back for your victory. I'm going to come back defeating whatever's going on in your life. I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back and defeat COVID because the devil ain't going to win. Then they remembered Jesus' words. And so there was the promise. They forgot, and now they're reminded. And this is the exact same promise for us today. That he rose again and gives you a promise of victory in every area of your life. Not just this one little area over here. Oh, well, I'm struggling over here, but I'm also struggling over here. But this struggle is not as big as this one. No, every area of your life. He said, hey, I am going to rise again for your victory. No matter what it is, no matter what you're going through at home, no matter, I'm going through financial struggles. My marriage is broken. No, it's not broken. If it feels broken, pieces can be put back together. And Jesus is the master of putting pieces back together. So we see this. He rose again, comes back alive. COVID has nothing on the king. His name is bigger than COVID. His name is bigger than your issues. His name is bigger than your problems. It does not matter. You lay all that aside and just know, hey, there's a promise. That promise 2,000 years ago is the same promise today. Promises that, hey, you're forgiven, number one, and there's an eternity in heaven for you. Promises of peace and anxiety. Promises of health in the midst of sickness. Right now, we keep on talking about COVID and how crazy it is. There's health in the midst of that sickness. Promises of restoration in brokenness. A promise that in John 10, it says this. He says, no one will ever take you away from him. And then a promise in Matthew 6 where he says, hey, I love this. Just these two simple words are so incredible to me. Don't worry. Don't worry. So many times we get caught up in worry and we begin to worry. And what happens is I like to look at it like this. We kind of become selfish because we make those worries about ourselves. We begin to put them all on ourselves and we lose sight of what? The promise. But then we say, oh, no, but Jesus, you don't get it. You don't understand. No. Don't worry. My promise still stands. No, but Jesus, you really don't understand what I'm going through. You don't, no. You don't understand. My promise still stands. But Jesus, there's this thing going on right now in our country. It's called COVID-19 and people are dying. And then there's all this chaos going on in the world. No, don't worry. My promise still stands. A promise that we serve a king that is alive and fighting every battle for us. We don't have to fight him. He's fighting them for us. I love that song. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. It's one of my favorite songs because it's a reminder to us. How do we fight our battles? Through worship, through him. Because we don't have to do it alone. He's never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. So what do we see? We see the passion of the king, which is who? The passion of the king is you. The passion of the king is me. It's us. It's his people. We are the passion. We see the power of the king. And then what do we see? We see the promise of the king. But what we have to realize here is all of those things lead up to one thing. Everything that Jesus did between the passion for you, laying down his power to give us a promise was all for one reason. We have to realize that all of that, Jesus did everything there to give us purpose, to give us purpose in our life so that we don't just have to every day walk around and say, oh, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know what to do. Today I'm just going to make random decisions. I'm just going to make random crazy decisions. That's what I'm going to do. No. He did all of that to give us purpose. We don't have to live life without direction anymore. That's the whole Bible is like a big map for us. It gives us the directions. You open it up and read it, you're good to go. You know what you need to do, how you need to act, what you need to say. And in Ephesians 3:20, what does it say? God can do anything more than we could ask, everybody knows this, or imagine. And that means in your wildest dreams. Dream it up, think about it. He can do more than that. He did all of this because he has purpose for you. He has purpose for me. And you would be sitting at home and just think, oh, well, what's my purpose? I know you're saying that, but I don't really feel I have purpose. No. God has an ordained purpose for every single person. Every single person he has purpose for. He did all this because of the purpose for your life. Where you can go in to your city or your town and impact Stockton. You can impact Ash Grove. You can impact Nevada. You can impact Bolivar. You can impact River Valley to make a difference for Jesus, to make a difference in a dark, crazy world. To be good news, this is how I like to say it, to be the good news in a world of crisis. So let's not go through another day, another season of our lives where we're running around and saying, you know what, well, I recognize that there's a passion. I recognize Jesus had a passion. I recognize that. Or you know what, I understand that he's all powerful, that he has power. I understand that. That's great. Or where we know, hey, there's a promise. I read it in my Bible. Hey, I've read it multiple times. Hey, there's a promise there. And just nonchalantly just kind of push those things to the side. But that we realize that the reason for it all was to give us purpose and to be light in a dark world. And right now, more than ever, we as Christians get the opportunity to be light in a dark world, to be the light that this crazy world with crisis needs. Instead of jumping on board and getting scared and scattered and saying, well, what am I going to do? You jump right into the wheel. Jump right into God's purpose for your life. So we have the passion, which is you. The power, he lays down the power for the passion. Remember, he could have changed it all with one word. He lays down the power for the passion for you. And I try to remind myself of this every single day. I really do. And my kids, I tell them, hey, Jesus had power. He laid down that power for a brief moment for you. Because why? Because he's passionate about you. Because he did all of this because there's a purpose for your life. And so let's choose to walk in purpose, choose to walk in the purpose that the King, Jesus, the King, died for. I want to encourage you, man, this week, over the next month, whatever you're going through, man, just start thinking about those 3 P's right there. Think of it. Think of the passion, the power, the promise, and then it's all for one thing. It's all for the purpose in your life. Remind yourself that daily. Go back and rewatch it if you need to. Write it down and start meditating on what God has done for you. Start thinking about, hey, what is your purpose in life? What is God purposely doing in your life to give you purpose, to give you meaning, to push you? And then go into your towns and right now, man, wreak havoc on the devil. Wreak havoc on the enemy and remind him every single day of those 3 P's. And then remind him, hey, guess what? I've read the end of the book. I know how your story ends. And remind him every single day. So I'm going to be encouraged by it. I hope you're encouraged by it. Hey, we love you all the way from Texas. We love you guys. We love getting to be a part of the Hill and just watching the Hill grow. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon, hopefully very, very soon. But man, let's choose to walk in the purpose that the King Jesus has laid out there for us. I love you guys. Deuce.